I'm Jeremy Scahill from Dropsite News, dropsitenews.com. Just a quick heads up, I have laryngitis, so I apologize for how I sound. Normally, I would reschedule this interview, but it is so urgent that I just don't want to do that. In recent weeks, the Trump administration has intensified its war against free speech and due process in the United States with the snatching of Columbia University graduate and U.S. legal permanent resident Mahmoud Khalil. He has been charged with no crimes, and the Trump administration has actually admitted that it is attempting to deport Khalil in a case that has no relationship to criminal charges, but rather because he used his constitutionally protected free speech in a way that this administration has deemed should be grounds for deportation. This is a very serious attack on basic liberties, including of all Americans, but not just Americans, because the First Amendment does not only apply to US citizens, no matter how hard Trump supporters fight to try to make that true. It's just not true. This specific case is part of a broader pattern, and the Biden administration also laid the groundwork for this. We should not let them off the hook. But Donald Trump is president right now, and he and his vice president are running around the world and around the country lecturing everyone about how they are the standard bearers of free speech, that Europe's speech laws are actually a very, very serious problem. I agree that Europe's speech laws are a problem, but this administration has no credibility to talk about that, particularly when it comes to speech that is critical of Israel and its genocidal war against the Palestinians. In the eyes of this administration, speech is free unless you're talking about Palestine, unless you're talking about Israel's war crimes. They're attacking people for exercising their free speech, including American citizens, while they're welcoming leaders of foreign countries who have arrest warrants out for them from the International Criminal Court. Now, Trump is promising that this case against Mahmoud Khalil is the first of many more to come, including targeting more green card holders and other immigrants in the United States. The administration is also using the threat of canceling funding to colleges and universities as a way to try to force them to end free speech on their campuses, to end their protests of the genocidal war that the US is facilitating against the Palestinians of Gaza, or to prohibit any criticism of the ideology of Zionism. Columbia University is engaging in shameful cowardice right now, and it is bent over backwards to do the bidding of Trump and his minions. There are more raids happening on that campus, and there is more backing down from that administration in the face of Trump's threats. This case of Mahmoud Khalil is likely to set a precedent in this legal battle over the very existence of free speech and due process in the United States. We've been reporting on this extensively. You can see all of that at dropsitenews.com. And as Mahmoud Khalil was being shipped to Louisiana to an ICE detention facility, we learned of another attack on free speech of a pro-Palestine activist and scholar at another elite American university. Yale has suspended the international law scholar and outspoken defender of Palestinian rights, Helia Dogatti. She served as the deputy director of the Law and Political Economy Project at Yale. What I'm about to tell you is a truly insane story. On March 2nd, an AI-powered, far-right, though obscure website called Jewish Onliner published a story accusing Dr. Dogatti of being a member of the pro-Palestine advocacy organization Samadoun, which the US government placed on a sanctions list, claiming that it is a fundraising operation for a US designated terror organization, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. I encourage people to read about the PFLP's history and make your own judgment. The article characterized Dogatti as a member of a terrorist organization and of promoting terrorist leaders and activities on her social media accounts. Less than 24 hours after that article was published, Dr. Dogatti says that she was placed on leave by Yale's law school. The school revoked her IT access and her email and banned her from campus. Yale then launched an investigation into her quote unquote activities. And in a statement, Yale said that it was investigating Dr. Dogatti for ties to, quote, potential unlawful conduct. And the university claimed, quote, such an action is never initiated based on a person's protected speech. Now, I should note that the Trump administration announced this week that Yale was among 60 schools that could face funding cuts if federal investigations show evidence that they're not cracking down on what this administration describes as anti-Semitic behavior. Dr. Helia Dogatti says she will not be intimidated by these attacks against her, and she's retained a lawyer to confront Yale's actions against her, and she joins me now. Dr. Dogatti, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me and for the great work and important work that you do, Jeremy.
I want to note before we get into it that your attorney, Eric Lee, set a condition for this interview that I think is an understandable one. He said, quote, in the present environment, Trump is illegally applying immigration law and waging unprecedented attacks on freedom of speech and association. And for this reason, we aren't going to be answering questions about attendance at political events or membership in groups beyond our statements that she is not a member of any group that would constitute a violation of law. So, Dr. Dogatti, let's start with your work, the kind of activism you've done in your life, the scholarship you've engaged in. Give us an overview of who you are and what you stand for.
I started my position at Yale Law School in October 1st of 2023. And before that, I was finishing my PhD in law and legal studies at Carleton University, where I spent a better half of a decade researching and writing about sanctions regime on Iran. And I studied TWAIL, Third World Approaches to International Law, and I tried to understand and analyze what are the harms, what are the violence of sanctions, and who are the beneficiaries, and what are the beneficiaries of those. And so I've done a lot of work on what are sanctions implications, their imperialist natures when it comes to countries of the global south being targeted for standing up against US imperialism. And before I joined Carleton, I did my LLM in transnational law. That's a Master of Law at King's College London in the UK. I studied my dissertation was essentially on sanctions on banks. And also during my undergrad, I did a bachelor at Carleton also in law and a minor in political science. I've done a lot of working and thinking and writing and teaching about these laws, these policies, and that I'm now being accused of violating. And I have extensively also written about US's illegal acts of aggressions in Iraq, in Afghanistan. I have written about the laws of war and how the United States is essentially immune from them and from being prosecuted in the international criminal system and international legal system. And I have written critically about the existing international legal system that fails to uphold the most basic fundamental principles of international law when it comes to Palestine, when it comes to genocide. And so I have never been, and this is part of my academic background. I should also maybe share a little about my activism and my organizing work. I have always been, way before October 7th acceleration of genocide, I've always been vocal, unapologetic about talking and defending Palestinian liberation struggle. And I have been very vocal. In fact, I've organized an international people's tribunal on US imperialism in the forms of sanctions. And that was like a 2-year project that was organized, and we had testimonies and witnesses from all across the countries that are targeted by US sanctions. And I've always been very vocal, and these are only a few examples of some of the work I have done over the years on these topics. I've never accepted I never held my tongue. I've never accepted any jobs with the condition of being silent or compromising on my principles, because I deeply believe that knowledge has to be in the service of the oppressed. Otherwise, it's meaningless. And I think not just me, because as we'll talk, I'm sure we'll get into it. This is not an individual case. This is about making sure that no one dares to talk, to challenge the narratives in the in corporate media, in Western academia, so that they maintain the hegemony and the domination of these narratives, because discourse and narratives and what we define that is taking place, it really is at the core of the struggle.
All right, let's get into the immediate attack on you that's happening right now. How did you first become aware that this AI website, this far right website called Jewish Onliner, had published this article about you?
All right, so the article was originally published on March 2nd. I learned about it on March 3rd. So it was a rainy Monday, and I was just driving to driving to the place I was going to get to start working. And I am notified that there is this a report on me. I honestly didn't. It was such a ridiculous report that I genuinely did not think it would be taken seriously. And I've been doxxed before, and I've experienced this, and I've seen this. So I didn't make much of it, to be honest, for a few hours. However, I did notify my employer immediately that since they were being mentioned, they should know about this, and it was on their radar. And so I went about my day, and it was later. It was almost the evening that I started getting emails, requests for commenting on it, because they were going to articles were going to be published, and the most notable one was the right-wing student newsletter at Yale, who reached out to me for comments, and so I went to bed that night. I refused to make any comments. I went to bed. I got barely any sleep that night, and I wake up to so many distressed messages, so many calls, emails from my employers and otherwise, and to a very, very loud and increasing voices on like fascist trolls and right-wing, high-profile right-wing accounts on Twitter, smearing me, attacking me, hating me, it was really stressful for me to wake up to that. And immediately I talked to folks at work, and I was told that Yale has been calling nonstop. Yale Law School has been calling nonstop. It's been circulated that it's been sent to the highest level of Yale Law School, and that they've been calling nonstop, demanding that they meet with me immediately. And realizing how serious the situation has become out of a ridiculous right-wing, really just. I just couldn't believe that this was being taken seriously at this level by Yale Law School. And so immediately I decided that I'm not going to meet with them before retaining legal counsel. And that's what I told them. And so it took me a few hours to then call around, ask people, put me in touch with lawyer. I consulted with a few, and it was after in the afternoon, early in the afternoon, that I was able to talk to Eric. And Eric probably knew me for 1 hour and had learned about my case for an hour or two before we gave my immediate employer, LP Project, the contact, and so that they can put the law school in touch with me. And once they did, my lawyer immediately reached out to them, because we wanted to know what are the implications for this meeting, what are they asking for, what are potential, if there are going to be potential disciplinary actions against me, and what is it that they want to get, like what are the what are the procedures that are going to be regulating this so-called interview that felt very much like an interrogation, with an intense and aggressive tone of talking, language that they have used. And what was very interesting and really disturbing was that Yale Law School retained an external counsel that I have later learned. I mean, in their public profile, this person proudly provides Israel as a service. In their list of services on their website, they actually put Israel as the service that they provide, number one. Number two, they also mention that they represent defense companies and aerospace and companies that are directly invested in the Palestinian genocide. And also, they've also worked for a couple of years, I believe, for the State Department of the United States. So this really apparent conflict of interest, I was very worried about being quote unquote interviewed by someone who has represented and protected the interest of those I am speaking against. And it was also very disturbing for us for how much pressure they were putting on us to meet with them immediately. They were not allowing us, and this is at the time it's 4:30 in the day. I've been up since 6 a.m. I didn't get any sleep. I'm fasting because it's Ramadan. And that they are pushing us to meet with them without any reasonable time really to prep. So I was essentially denied due process. And right at a time when my lawyer talks on the phone with their lawyer, asking them that we need a brief, religious accommodation. He also my lawyer had a conflict of schedule for the evening. And we needed until tomorrow to be able to meet with them. They didn't even wait for us they asked us to put that in writing and send it to them in an email. They did not even wait for us to send that email. Because after the phone call, Eric and I was on the phone talking about this and consulting about what we're going to put in that email. And as we were doing that, just when we sent that email, we received their email putting me on leave and banning me from campus as if I'm a threat to campus, and cutting all my access, essentially. They removed my profile. They removed all my names from both LPE project and as well as the Yale Law School profile. They were so quick to disown me. They were so quick to just really making it clear that their goal was not to find any truth or do any investigation. And this is the so-called first, top law school in the country, right? The lawyers are probably the most expensive lawyers in the country they either didn't do research to realize what we found later. After that evening, we did a simple Google search about the source of this allegation, which was a right-wing Zionist AI generated report, which we can talk about it later. They either didn't know or they did and they didn't care. So I don't know which worse, not knowing, they should have known, they didn't, or they did and they didn't care and they just wanted to push me so that I don't find out about it. I don't have answers. I'm not saying they did or didn't, but we did ask them this question and it went unanswered. They did not respond to this question of whether or not they knew this was an AI generated report that they're basing my suspension and my leave on, without any due process, without any investigation. So
just one point of clarification. Did you actually sit for this interview or interrogation with that lawyer?
I wasn't given the chance because I was accused of not being cooperative because I had questions about what was the interview about, what I needed to prep for, what was the procedures, should I expect any disciplinary actions in that interview. They refused to answer any questions about the interview, and I asked about religious accommodation because, again, it was late in the afternoon. I was about to break my fast, and I just wasn't and I didn't have time to prep with my lawyer, so I was in no shape to go into an interview. And it was ridiculous because it was only that morning that they found out about this. It could have been the day after. And so before we got they dismissed all my requests, and they placed me on leave. So that interrogation did not take place the day after, obviously, because I was already suspended.
Before this incident and before this AI generated article about you sparked this investigation, did you have any indication that Yale as an institution or any influential people there were concerned about your activities, your speech, your public appearances, your social media? Like, was there anything preceding this that made you sense that there were people out to kind of get you there?
Um, so what I'll say is that Yale historically, and also over the past year, they've been going at a student's encampments. They violently repressed a student activist and a student organizer at Yale Law School and beyond, who were at the encampments, who were protesting the Israeli genocide, and who were standing up for Palestinian liberation. That being said, when I was being interviewed for this position, before and after and during my position, I never held my tongue. I never hide my politics. I never took any position again and stayed silent to keep that position. I never done that. I never will. And they were very well aware of my politics, of my involvements, all the information that is out there. They've always been public. I mean, I'm not going to get into any of the allegations, but I just want to note that they are crying over a panel I did in 2022. Like that's one of the main sources that are being referenced. Nothing about what I've done Yale didn't know, or they should have known. It's not something that was new about me. And to answer your question, I didn't feel like I was about to be targeted. No, I did not see that I was being targeted. We all feel the threat of the unfolding fascism in this country and the unfolding authoritarianism that is really trying to just eradicate any and all voices for Palestine and against the American Zionist genocide. But there was no indication for me to expect that Monday morning I'll be hit with this. However, I think it's also important for me to say that it's not about me. This is not about me. It's not about Mahmoud Khalil. It really isn't about any of the individuals or any the specificity of the cases and the individuals involved. It really is a very much coordinated attack on free speech, and about how much the government is terrified of not being able to silence the voices that they've been trying to silence for so many years, but also especially in the past a year and a half, and they're failing to do so.
Where does your case stand right now? I mean, are you contemplating suing them? Is there any process still? Like, are you going to sit for any discussion with them? Like, what is the current status of things?
I don't think I'm at the liberty to discuss much of the legal strategy that is being explored right now with my legal team. But what I will share is that they will not intimidate me. They will not silence me, and I will fight this not for me, but really because if they can silence us, there will be no people left to defend anyone, including the professors who are remaining silent to keep their tenure, including people who are scared for their jobs. Them being silent is doing more harm to them than them talking and speaking up and defending everyone's right. I will use everything and anything in my disposal to fight this fascist dictatorship of the United States.
What are your, I'd like to hear your political analysis separate from what's happening at Yale. The October 7th, the beginning of the Israeli genocide, the Operation Al-Aqsa flood happens on October 7th, and then immediately the Israeli government begins a massive scorched earth attack against Gaza. Share your political analysis of what we've seen over the past 16 plus months.
So it's very important to start with, it did not start on October 7th. This has been an ongoing genocide, and it's been ongoing for plus 75 years, and it's been a genocide ever since 1948. What we witnessed on October 7th is just an acceleration of the genocide, and it's the latest instant of the Zionist American colonial project in West Asia to ensure that they are able to control, to steal, to kill, to destruct the land and the people and the resources of Palestine, and by extension of other countries in the region, including Iran, including Syria, including Lebanon, Iraq, who are standing up, who are opposing and fighting U.S. Imperialism, Zionist settler colonialism, and so it's important to recognize Israel not obviously not as a state or even anything close to it, but very much as a political project by Western colonialist imperialist forces that were put in our region. And so what was significant about the past a year and a half, 2 years almost, is the incredible resistance of the Palestinians and of the popular forces of region all across to really challenge and to really defeat the imperialist forces, both on the ground, since the Israeli regime has not been able to achieve any of its military. There's been a lot of death and destruction, but in terms of their main goal was really to defeat and to complete destruction of Gaza, and to complete the ethnic cleansing project of Palestinians in that land, and they have failed to do so. And the reason we are being repressed the way we are in the United States is precisely because of that. The defeat of that they suffered, Americans and the Zionists and their allies in Gaza and in Palestine. The defeat, it's also the defeat of their propaganda. We saw unprecedented protest and push in the streets, in the schools, and in countries that you've never seen such protests and such pushback. And that indicates the defeat of the propaganda, of the Zionist propaganda, despite the millions and millions in corporate media wasted instead of going to public education, instead of going to healthcare for Americans and any other, all the other countries complicit in this genocide. They funded the propaganda machine, the education, because American universities are truly the imperialist, the intellectual arm of U.S. imperialism. And so this defeat has led them to feel so terrified, so and as their decline accelerates, they are terrified, and so they have to go all out to repress any and all voices to make sure that the next round of the attack on Gaza and on the region, the war that they're going to be waging, really make sure that there's no opposition inside, so that they can have a unified fascist regime that is not being challenged from inside, and so that they can go all out, and no opposition for their aggression and brutality in the region, and especially in Palestine as well.
I want to ask you what you've learned about this AI publication. Had you ever heard of this publication before they printed this article about you? Were you aware of it?
Nope. I never knew about it. And in fact, I think within the like the first day I learned about it until Yale, the morning after that Yale learned about it, they had around like 10 likes or 7 shares. It was so insignificant. And what happened was it got amplified by Zionist high profiles on Twitter, the ones who have been attacking other students and other academics. And so also immediately, I think the day after, we learned that it's now the official policy of the United States government to use AI, weaponize AI, to identify pro-Palestinian voices and make sure that they are expelled, they are detained, if they engage in any of these activities. And so, no, I actually didn't know about it. And it's funny because I should share this with you. The New York Times reporter tried to reach out to this platform, and she got confirmation that it's a bot, and that there's no human behind it to talk to her about the case or the report that they generated.
Yeah, and you're referring, there was a big article about your case in the New York Times recently, and you gave a brief interview to the Times, and then they wrote a bit about this publication and said that when they reached out to it, a sort of AI-generated response came back, and then there was some more, well, there are people involved with it, but this is how we're running it, and we're remaining anonymous because of our own protection. And Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, also has looked into this publication and others, and raised the possibility that it actually may be working in concert with the Israeli government or the Israeli military.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and they also mentioned in Hazard, they also mentioned that this platform on Jewish Onliner, they also use misinformation to generate what they do, and yet the coordinated attacks that they do.
So you mentioned earlier that they were trying to reach you after this, and that there was a flurry of attempts to contact you. Did you ever have an actual conversation with anyone at Yale, or was it all over email or text? Like, what did you ever actually speak to someone at Yale about this?
Oh yeah, I had a meeting with the LP project leadership once I retained my lawyer, and we had a conversation about this. And I explained to them
How did they, wait, first start with this. How did they explain to you why they were sitting you down to have this conversation? What did they say to you?
So they were being contacted by Yale Law School leadership, and they were essentially trying to liaison, or that's what they thought they were doing. I expected more meaningful and serious support from them because I was their deputy director, and they have failed to provide that. And so, yeah, they said that they want to protect me and that they're worried about this. And we sat down to talk about what they've been talking to about with Yale leadership. And then it was after that meeting that we reached out to Yale. My lawyer talked to Yale Law School's representative, and what I said. But yeah, so I was in contact, in constant communication with the LP project leadership throughout that day. Yeah.
Had anyone from Yale prior to this ever mentioned Samadoun to you, or any organization, or given you any warning that, we're concerned you might be involved with a sanctioned organization? Did Yale ever raise any of this with you prior to this AI article being published?
Never. And in fact, in my Yale profile and the bio that I have provided to school to put it out there, I had said that I have been a long time organizer in the anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, and anti-colonialist movements and student movements in Canada, where I was before. And I had been very loud and proud about my what I've done and my activities, and there's no reason for them not to know about this. But no, they never raised any concerns. In fact, when I was being hired at the LP, I was led to believe that my politics and my intellectual work and my organizing work is really an asset to the team, and it turns out it wasn't.
You mentioned before the attacks that you endured after this came to public light, but I'm also aware that you've been attacked before as well. This wasn't a new development where people have gone after you. And in fact, anyone that wants to know anything about you, there's videos of you giving speeches. You're very public in your positions. You're not trying to hide your political views. But describe what happened like right after this was published. You spoke in general about it, but what started happening once this article went online and started getting amplified by higher profile accounts?
It was pretty much the playbook of every doxing situation that has happened to pro-Palestine voices over the past 2 years. They were calling me a terrorist. They were calling ICE on me. They were tagging Homeland Security. I received emails of death threats. I received really just a lot of verbal abuse, a lot of harassments. And I endured this while fasting and also being not having rested the night before. But Jeremy, truly when I was going through this, and by the time that it was in the evening and I could break my fast after enduring all the hate online and all the just really and also not being supported by the institution I thought was going to protect me. I genuinely was thinking about, I had food to eat. I had food that night to break my fast with, and I had people, loved ones, to do iftar that evening with. And all I could think about was Palestinians who don't have anything to eat for their iftar, and don't have any loved ones to break their fast with, because of the American Zionist genocide. And I felt like it just felt really difficult to even think about what our silence and what our complicity as a society allowing this genocide to happen. It was really difficult for me, beyond anything personal that was coming at me, which was absolutely, I was just actively trying to situate myself within the broader struggle and just really think about why this is happening and what is our role and complicity in it, for staying silent, for not fighting it. And that is really the main reason I am so determined to not be silenced with all these attacks. And they haven't stopped yet, by the way. It's been ongoing. I continue to receive Zionist threats from not only from America, but also Zionists from all across different countries are attacking me right now in different languages. It is quite disturbing and disgusting, but also we owe it to Palestinians. This is the least we can do, is to speak up, because if we don't, we are telling the genociders that our voices are expendable, and we can't afford to do that. We can't afford to live in a country. We can't afford to let them normalize genocide. That is what they have. That is what these academic institutions have done for the past 2 years. They critical statements, decolonizing the curriculum, having critical scholarship. The result is the fascism that we are seeing unfold, which also tells us that we haven't done enough. We haven't done nearly enough.
Yeah. What we're now in this moment where the Trump administration is using threats of cutting of federal funding to universities, Publicly, it's been reported that 400 million was cut from Columbia. We have some information indicate it's higher than that. Yale and Harvard and others are, also being threatened, and many of these universities are very clearly taking the knee, bending the knee in front of King Trump on this issue. As a scholar and as someone who has worked at one of the top academic institutions in the world, how do you see this moment when you have a White House that is using the threat of pulling funding if universities don't crush the free speech of their students on a particular issue, and specifically on a foreign nation? Like this is one of the most fundamentally un-American things you can imagine. Americans have the right to criticize their own government, and not just Americans. The Constitution doesn't just apply to U.S. citizens. I want to keep repeating that because there's so much ignorance about this. But we should be clear on what's happening here. They are attacking free speech rights to a degree that they seem to believe that the First Amendment should be amended itself to state that there's an Israel exception in the First Amendment. And in the case of Mahmoud Khalil, and on a micro level in your situation at the university, there is this move now to say, well, due process is a quaint concept and we don't need to have due process anymore. But talk about this situation with universities, federal funding, and these free speech issues.
Thank you for that. That is very important. And the friendly amendment I'm going to make to what you just said is that Israel is not an external force of the United. Israel is not a separate, an external country. Israel is inherently an American imperial project in West Asia. American security, not American security, American imperialist agenda depends on the survival of the Zionist entity. And this is why, because if you don't understand this, you can't make sense of why America, the US government, is going to this extent to repress its own people and its own citizens and its own students, right? We need to understand how deeply the Israeli regime, the Zionist entity, and the American government, they're deeply intertwined for American imperialism to work, to understand the level of repression we're facing. That's why it's inherently, our liberation is inherently connected to Palestinian liberation. That's number one. Number two, to your question about academic institutions, I think it's also equally important to realize that US American institutions, especially these Ivy Leagues, especially these Ivy Leagues, they are not just being silent. They are very much a mechanism and a tool in the hands of the fascist project that the US under Trump is unfolding. Not to say that this was not being pursued under other administrations, including Biden. They are very much unified in the fascism, and there's absolute unity in the genocide of our people. But just to say that there are different measures and different policies that they take, and this is the manifestation of what has been, as you mentioned also in the very beginning. It's important to realize that, and it's important to realize the important role that the academic institutions have been playing. They have been producing, Yale Law School has produced so many war criminals. We have Bush, we have Hillary Clinton, Yale Law School has trained and produced so many war criminals in its history that it is not accurate at all to say that it is being silent. It is very much complicit. It has always been complicit in the crimes, in the war crimes, and in the genocide and the killing and the mass murders and the wars that are inflicted upon global South and our people. And that's why it's not surprising the way they act. That's why it's not surprising that Yale Law School, which is typically so hard to even get a meeting with them, they are ready to meet and all out to just have a meeting with me without allowing any time, without allowing any proper preparation and due process. And they may consider people submitting AI generated things as plagiarism, but they base AI produced reports on the basis of their administration decision and putting their employees on leave. It really is clarifying moment for a lot of people to just realize how empty of any intellectual integrity these institutions are.
What is your message right now to Yale University?
To apologize, not just to me, but to everyone over the past 2 years. All the students they repressed, all the voices they silenced, to take accountability, to divest from weapons manufacturers and the industry of genocide that they're invested in, and to disclose their investments in those companies. Academic institutions are not places to invest and make profit of the death machine that the United States is running. It needs to be a place for free thoughts, free speech, and cultivating knowledge production that will help us build a society where we all are happier, where humans are dignified, and where we have true freedom to live. And we just don't have that. This is a fascist dictatorship we're living under, and intellectual institutions really do hold a lot of power in changing that, and they're failing to do so.
Well, Dr. Dogatti, I want to thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jeremy.
Dr. Helia Dogatti is an international law scholar and an activist. She is currently being targeted by Yale University, where she has served as the Deputy Director of the Law and Political Economy Project. You can read Dr. Dogatti's full statement on the website of our friends at mondoweiss.net. We're also going to link to that on our show page. That does it for this episode. I apologize again for my laryngitis. I felt like our viewers and listeners needed to hear this story. Make sure to follow us on our podcast feed. You can also search for Dropsite News wherever you get your podcasts. We also have a section on our webpage where you can find links to the RSS feed. Leave us a rating if you can. It helps other people to find us. We're a 501c3 tax-exempt news organization. You can make contributions at dropsitenews.com. Tell your friends and also your enemies about us. Until next time, thank you very much. I'm Jeremy Scahill.